My name is John the Baptist, and I am the associate pastor here at St. Andrews, and I'm so grateful to be with you today. Some people come to faith in Jesus quickly and easily. Some people have some experience, or they go to a church, and maybe they just never thought about it all that much, but for whatever reason, faith comes easily to them. But it was not quick or easy or sudden for me. My faith journey has been one of crisis and conflict and a long series of ever-deepening commitments made in moments of hope. And I haven't been on this journey alone. There have been people at critical moments in my life cheering me on, challenging me, and occasionally calling me out when I needed it. But all along the way, there have been people who have given me what I needed to take the next step in my faith. And it started as early as I can remember. I was, to put it mildly, a weird kid. I tended to do things my own way, and it often put me at odds with the people around me. Looking for some pictures to try to describe for you exactly what I was like growing up in some of those faith moments for me, I found my kindergarten report card recently, and they made a comment, my dear sweet kindergarten teacher, that said, "These are the two things we talked about. Has the opportunity to be high achieving, has some behavior issues." Also, I had stellar marks in reading and in numbers, and my only truly negative grades were participates in music and dance time. I often felt like an outsider when I was young, like maybe I was missing out on something that everyone else was getting. But at the church I was attending at the time, they loved me exactly how I was. At the Kingston Federated Church in Kingston, Missouri, population 25, and that was the town, not the church, my dad was preaching, and they loved our family. There was a woman behind us who always seemed to have candy when I was talking during the service. The leaders of that church consistently told my parents not to worry so much when me and my brother were running back and forth on the front pews while my dad was preaching. And when one of the worship leaders heard me singing along loudly with the hymns, they asked me to sing a special song during a service. And I sang Go Tell It on the Mountain, because that was the only song I was confident I wouldn't forget the words to. When I felt different, when I felt out of place, that church family made me feel like I belonged. And so early on, I was all in on the whole church thing, and the Kingston Federated Church was a part of that. And later on, as I got into adolescence, I was not terribly impressed by the ability of the churches of my youth to keep up with the times. I, on the other hand, was obviously committed to being whatever this was. I was adventurous, I was nerdy, and contrary to what I saw in Scripture, a lot of the people in the pews beside me seemed to think that Christianity could be boiled down to being nice and safe and simple. Church still felt like a family to me, but it often committed the two cardinal sins for me of being boring and being anti-intellectual. But then I had a youth leader in high school named Caleb. He was just a volunteer. He had gone to a Christian liberal arts college, and he rode motorcycles off-road, and he got so excited he yelled a little when he preached, and he challenged me and the other students in our youth group to take our faith seriously. and inspired me to go to a Christian liberal arts college. And at that college, I had an English professor named Dr. Dudry, who was witty and sarcastic and fluent in several ancient languages. And he made me write a paper on the echoes of Plato's allegory of the cave in the children's books, The Chronicles of Narnia. And I became committed to a faith that demanded something of me and required me to be a critical thinker. This was not a boring or an anti-intellectual faith, and that was thanks largely to Caleb and to Dr. Dudry. And so I was called to the ministry. I got married, I started a family, I started serving my first church. And especially as I became a parent, I started to be concerned about what faith was being passed on to my kids. And I saw how faith was being used against other people in my community. Rather than inviting in, it was being used to exclude. And around that time, I discovered an author online. She had a Baptist background, just like mine. She too had seen faith used to exclude, just like I had, and she spoke eloquently about her journey to a different kind of faith than she had grown up with. And so Rachel Held Evans became a part of my faith story. So I want you to reflect just for a moment today on who or what brought you to Jesus in the first place. Why are you personally here today? What did you need that God provided? Who are your faith ancestors? Who are the ones who have gone before you, passing on a faith to you that you have made your own? Now notice I'm not just talking about biological ancestors. I mean, sometimes it is our biological ancestors. Sometimes it's our parents or grandparents, an aunt or an uncle. But often it's kidmin teachers, Sunday school teachers, youth group volunteers, our teachers at school, friends, authors we maybe never met. One of my favorite examples of this kind of ancestor is Abuela Claudia in the movie In the Heights. Have you seen this movie or seen the play? Oh, y'all are missing out. Immediately after this, go and watch In the Heights. It is an amazing reflection on communities, and specifically on how communities grow and change over time, and how the values of those communities are held by the people within them and passed on. Within this story, Abuela Claudia doesn't actually have any children or grandchildren, but nevertheless, she takes on the care of her whole neighborhood. When someone's in trouble or someone is in need, they know that they can turn to her. And so, whether they are related to her in any way or not, they call her Abuela. We've all had those people in our lives who have poured into us, who have taken the steps to make us who we are today, who have paved the way for our faith, who have provided us opportunities for growth, who have been models for us of what godliness looks like when it's being lived out. We all have faith ancestors, but not all of us become faith ancestors. We're going to read one of the Psalms this morning that talks a lot about these ancestors, about the role they play in our faith, and about how we might best honor their gifts of faith to us. So we're going to be in Psalm 78, starting with verse 1. Listen, my people, to my teaching. Tilt your ears toward the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth with a proverb. I'll declare riddles from days long gone. Ones that we've heard and learned about. Ones that our ancestors told us. We won't hide them from their descendants. We'll tell the next generation all about the praise due the Lord and his strength, the wondrous works God has done. He established a law for Jacob and set up instruction for Israel, ordering our ancestors to teach them to their children. This is so that the next generation and children not yet born will know these things And so they can rise up and tell their children to put their hope in God, never forgetting God's deeds, but keeping God's commandments. And so that they won't become like their ancestors, a rebellious, stubborn generation, a generation whose heart wasn't set firm and whose spirit wasn't faithful to God. May God bless the reading and hearing of just a portion of God's word. We have each been nurtured by a faith community. And this has happened in many different ways. For all of the people gathered here, there is a different story. Some of us grew up in supportive communities, like the ones that I had. And this is a natural extension of that experience. Me being part of the church, me being part of the faith is a natural extension of the things that I learned, of the things that were imparted to me, and of the love that was shown me from the very first moment that I can remember. Some of us grew up in harmful communities and have found a particular faith community to be a healing and supportive space. And some of us are new to faith communities in general. This is a place where belonging, a place where holiness, a place where goodness has been nurtured. But whatever your experience, wherever you started out, whatever it is that has brought you here, there is a mutuality in faith communities. Sometimes we carry the community, and sometimes the communities carry us. We have each been nurtured by faith communities, and we are each responsible then for our faith community. Notice all the active verbs in this passage. We won't hide, we will tell, we will teach. These are all active verbs, things that we do actively, not things that we just receive. And the purpose of this is so that the next generation and children not yet born will hear of God's love for them. Part of the responsibility of the church in each generation is to pass itself on to the next generation, ordering our ancestors to teach these things to their children. It is our responsibility not just to be a part of the church, not just to receive the church, but to pass on the church. So the question is when? When do we start passing on the church? We have all had faith ancestors, but we have not all become faith ancestors. When do we make the move from having faith ancestors to becoming faith ancestors? When do we make the shift in our minds from this is something I am part of to this is something I am responsible for? When we go through confirmation or when we become members here, these activities sound like passive things, don't they? Whenever we talk about confirmation, our youth director, Jake, gets upset at me when I say get confirmed, because we don't get confirmed. We confirm our faith. We don't just become members as though this is something that was happening to us. We confirm our baptismal vows. We affirm our baptismal vows, which include resisting evil, injustice, and oppression in whatever forms they present themselves, which is why I wore this shirt today. I just thought you needed to see that. And they also include participating in the ministries of the church through our prayers, our presence, our gifts, our service, and our witness. And this doesn't happen chiefly when we retire. This doesn't happen chiefly when we get out of college. I want you to notice for just a moment, last year there was a strong and vibrant group of seniors in the youth group. And they graduated and they went on to the next thing. And now the rising seniors and the younger students are having to step up in leadership in new ways. They are becoming ancestors for others. And last year's seniors. There are many of them that are already serving as middle school youth group leaders, that are serving in many other ways in the church. They are already becoming ancestors. They are working to become not just the church they need, but a church even for the generation after them. The psalmist says, the next generation and children not yet born will be taught these things. We are encouraged here to think not just about us, not just about the people in this building, but about generations into the future. Not just is this what I like, not just is this what I want, but will this enable the gospel to be preached to the next generation and children not yet born? Is what we are doing as a church going to enable God's work in this place to continue long after I am gone? And this is not always easy. We have the unique blessing in this time and place and the unique responsibility to be ministering to 5 generations of people at the same time. This has not happened before. How do we minister well to those who have built this church and passed it on to us? We do this through our Stephen ministries. We do this through our care team. In fact, I had a visit with one of these folks just last week. I was visiting a member of our church who is 99 years old. She's living in an assisted living facility, and she told me she's not able to hear well enough, even with her hearing aids, to be able to listen online. But she loves hearing about what is going on at St. Andrews. She loves hearing about the connections that we have made. In fact, she actually was a member of a church that my dad pastored 42 years ago in rural Missouri. I am relatively certain, although I cannot confirm, that she owned the Places General Store that I went to in Chillicothe, Missouri when I was about 5. And she prays for you all faithfully. She was delighted to hear about the 100 new members that we've had over the last year, and she said she couldn't remember the last time something like that happened at a church that she was part of. But how do we also cheer on our younger members and give them opportunities for meaningful service and even for leadership? You all remember 2 of our youth group students last summer preaching. They weren't just preaching on the mission trip Sunday. They were bringing what God had laid on their hearts and gifted us with the image of the church as the fungus of Christ, which I will forever remember. And there's another high school student currently serving on the ad board. They are already becoming the ancestors that they need. And this is a tough time. This is a tough time for churches to be attempting this. I read some statistics a few years ago. A church I was part of was talking about their glory days, was talking about when things were really humming and things were going well at this church. And they recognized that the church at that time was about half the size that it had been at that moment. And I found the statistic that the average worship service at a church in the United States was 137 people in the year 2000, and it had gone down to 65 people in the year 2020. Budget numbers for churches had dropped about halfway, exactly the same. And the number of people in my generation, millennials, and the generation after me, Gen Zers, who had left the church and not come back when they had families had more than doubled over the generation before us. So the Gen Xers are going to be really smug about that, I know. This is a difficult time in church history for churches to be attempting to not just exist, but to think about themselves as faith ancestors for others. And this is one of the reasons I am so grateful to be at St. Andrews, because I honestly believe that this is the church that the next generation needs. Not just the church that I need, but the church for those who are coming after me. I've been in a lot of different kinds of churches. I have been blessed to serve in a number of different denominations. But there is a reason I am here. There is a reason I'm in a United Methodist Church. There is a reason that I identify as Methodish. Not because we agree on everything 100% of the time. Not because I particularly love the denominational structure. Not because I think the leaders are perfect. But because I see so many active and vibrant and healing churches within this movement. When I look around at this community and the communities around, and I look for the churches that I believe will be carrying God's message of love into the next generation and for children not yet born, it's these. It's St. Andrews. And wisdom is planting trees we know we will never sit in the shade of. I recognize that the seeds we are planting here and now are going to grow up into trees that many of us will never see. But we are becoming the faith ancestors that we needed. Remember again your faith ancestors, the people who paved the way for the faith that you have today. We don't honor them by staying the same as we were when we met them. We honor them by becoming faith ancestors for a new generation. And there are a lot of ways that we can do this. There are a lot of ways that we can make this a church for the future. We do this by serving our kids and our youth. But also we do this by sharing our time and our talent and our treasure. We do this by our prayers and our presence and our gifts and our service and our witness to those around us. One of the things we've been talking about the last couple of weeks is a day in the life of St. Andrews. There are so many things going on within this building and within this church community that you may never see. I don't know how many times I have been here for one event and I've been welcoming people in, and we see a trail of people going in a different door, going into a different place, and people ask me, "Oh, are they coming for this?" No, they're actually coming for this other thing. Okay, no, actually they're coming for these two other things. We're having this support group. We're having this Bible study. We're having this Kidman meeting or activity. We are offering this meal. These folks are serving in this way. There are so many things going on in any given day. And the number Pastor Chris gave us last week was $4,000. It takes $4,000 a day to feed thousands of people through our ministry with the Sienna Francis House, Living Hope, and the Big Garden. It takes $4,000 a day for us to sit with, support, and offer comfort to a member of our congregation who has just lost someone in their family tragically. It takes $4,000 a day to teach our kids about the love of Jesus for them, $4,000 a day to provide Bible studies and small groups and support groups, $4,000 a day to share the good news of Jesus Christ with people far beyond these walls, to Texas and Missouri and Kentucky and Wisconsin and England and New Zealand and Zimbabwe, and with more than 1,600 members of our own church family right here in Omaha. And so my invitation to you today, as you reflect on your own faith ancestors, as you reflect on what it might mean to be a faith ancestor for others, Consider what you might be able to do to participate. Have you heard the old story about stone soup? I used to love reading fables when I was a kid, and I had a book of them, and one of my favorite stories in this book of fables was called Stone Soup. And there was somebody who came into a town, into a community where he didn't know anyone, and he was hungry. He had no food. He didn't have what he needed to be able to survive. And he knew that if he didn't get a meal sometime in the next 24 hours, he was likely to die. So this guy was sharp. And he talked to the members of the community, and he said, I'm planning on making soup. I'm making stone soup. You've had stone soup, right? And they hadn't. They'd never heard of it. And so what he did is he took the biggest pot that the community had, and he put a stone in it. And he said, this is my contribution. I'm going to put in what I have. Now I need everyone else in the community to put in what they have. And members of the community, some of them had a carrot. Some of them had some potatoes. One of them, the butcher, had some steaks that they cut up and put into the soup as well. And after a time, everyone had put in just what they had. Not more, but not less. And it was a stew. It was a stew that could be passed on to the entire community only because everyone shared what they had. Now, some of you've been bringing the steaks. That is great. I love that for you, and we appreciate your generosity. But I recognize that many of us as well feel like maybe we don't have anything to bring. Maybe what we have is not even worth bringing. And it's just not true. It takes each one of us sharing what we have, of our time, of our talent, of our treasure, to make this community what everyone needs, so that we can move towards a place and a time and a world where everyone has enough and no one has to go without. And this is how we become the church the next generation needs, because we each have a responsibility. We have all had ancestors. We have not yet all become ancestors. And so it is time for each of us to become ancestors for the next generation and for children not yet born. Would you all join me in a word of prayer? Good and gracious God, we are grateful for the communities that have nurtured us. I am grateful for the communities that raised me. And even though I am not in the same faith place as I was then, I am grateful for what they passed on to me. I thank you for everyone who is here in this building, everyone who is listening online, who is part of what you are doing in this place, and who has made the effort in whatever way to become the ancestor that they needed for the next generation and for children not yet born. And I ask that you would give us the grace and the courage to do what we each need to do to become ancestors. And God, we thank you most of all for Jesus, who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.